Your wedding date has been cancelled. My mom messaged, your brother scheduled his engagement party on the same day. I had booked everything 18 months ago. $85,000 spent. I answered, that's okay. Then I went ahead and got married that day anyway, without telling anyone, and shared the photos later. When they tried to intervene, we were already on our honeymoon. Hey, Reddit. I stared at my phone for a full minute before my body remembered how to breathe. The message didn't change. It didn't vanish. It didn't soften over time. Your wedding date is cancelled. Your brother scheduled his engagement party on the same day. No apology, no question, no hesitation, just a decision presented like a command. I had arranged my wedding 18 months prior. 18 months of careful preparation, 18 months of saving, coordinating, confirming, 18 months of creating something I thought was mine. $85,000 spent, and my mother wiped it away with 2 sentences. I was at the kitchen table when the text arrived. The morning light poured across the counter, catching the edges of papers I had laid out the night before. Contracts from vendors, seating charts, a handwritten timeline I had revised so many times the paper was almost worn through. My coffee remained untouched, steam curling up as if it had something to say before I did. For a moment I genuinely thought it must be a mistake. I called her but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. That familiar tightness settled in my chest, the one I'd felt my whole life whenever my brother was involved. The sensation that something significant to me was about to be quietly dismissed. When she finally called back, her tone was brisk and efficient, as if she was already on to the next task. Oh good. You saw my message, she said. What do you mean cancelled? I asked, keeping my tone steady. Well, she replied, your brother proposed last night, very romantic, and we all agreed his engagement party should be special. My grip tightened on the phone. On my wedding day? I asked. Yes, she said simply. It's the only date that works. I let out a short laugh before I could stop myself, a sound not from humor, but disbelief. I had reserved that date a year and a half ago. I reminded her, and her one-word response told me everything I needed to know. You can change it, she continued. You're flexible. You always have been. That was the word she'd used my entire life when she meant convenient, when she meant the one who adjusts so others don't have to. I began listing things aloud, hoping logic would do what emotion never could. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer. We traveled from another state, guests had already booked flights and hotels. She interrupted me. Your brother's moment matters right now, she said firmly. This is his first big milestone. I swallowed. And my wedding isn't? I asked quietly. There was a pause just long enough to hurt. Well, she said carefully, you're already settled. That sentence hit harder than the text ever had. Already settled, as if my marriage was merely a formality, as if my happiness had already peaked. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands shook so much I had to set the phone down on the table. I stared at the paperwork spread out before me, the evidence of how much care I'd put into this day, and felt something shift within me. Not anger, but recognition. When I told my fiancé, he didn't interrupt. He sat across from me, listening as I recounted the conversation word for word, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. They can't do that, he said finally. They already did, I replied. He reached for my hand. What do you want to do? That question shocked me because no one had ever asked it before. Over the next few hours, messages came in. My aunt, be understanding. My cousin, it's just a date. My mother, again, you'll get over this. Not one person asked how I felt. Not one acknowledged what I was losing. It was like watching the same pattern play out, one I'd lived through my entire childhood. Every birthday rescheduled, every holiday rearranged, every achievement quietly minimized so my brother could shine uninterrupted. I remembered being told to wait, to share, to not make a fuss. I realized something uncomfortable. I had been trained to disappear politely. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake replaying every compromise I'd ever made, every moment I'd convinced myself that being easy made me lovable. By morning, something inside me had stopped bending. My mother texted again, so, you'll cancel the vendors today. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed 2 words, that's fine. She replied immediately, good. I knew you'd understand. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd folded. She had no idea what I meant. And for the first time in my life, I didn't explain myself. Because while they were busy planning his engagement party, I was quietly realizing something powerful. I didn't need permission to live my own life. Once that realization settled in, there was no going back. They thought I'd given up, but all I'd really done was stop telling them what I was about to do next. I didn't cancel a single vendor. That's the part people never seem to grasp when they hear the story later. They assume there must have been some dramatic confrontation, some last-minute shouting match where I declared my independence and slammed doors. There wasn't. There was just a quiet morning, a cup of coffee gone cold, and a realization that settled within me so clearly it felt irreversible. For the first time, I wasn't asking myself how to make everyone happy. I was asking myself why my happiness had always been optional. After I texted, that's fine, my phone didn't stop buzzing. My mother followed up with instructions as if the matter were already settled. Call the venue today, release the date, we'll reimburse you later. Later, the word that had followed so many promises in my life that never came true. My aunt messaged next, your brother is so excited. Try not to ruin this for him. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I was angry, but because I finally saw the pattern clearly. My milestones were flexible. His were sacred. That afternoon, I called the venue. My hands shook slightly as I waited for the line to connect. "Hi," I said when the coordinator answered. "I'm calling about my wedding on the 14th. There was a brief pause. "Yes," she said carefully. "Your mother called earlier asking about releasing the date." I took a breath. "The event is not cancelled," I said calmly. "Everything is proceeding exactly as planned." Relief flooded her voice. "Understood," she said. "We'll see you on your wedding day." When I hung up, I sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of what I had just done settle in. I hadn't asked for permission, and nothing bad had happened. That night, my fiancé and I talked longer than we ever had before, not about logistics, but about values, the future, and what kind of family we wanted to build, and what behaviors we were no longer willing to accept. "I don't want our marriage to start with resentment," I said quietly. He reached across the table and took my hand. "Then let's start it with honesty," he responded. "Even if no one else liked it, we didn't announce anything. We didn't explain. We simply continued preparing quietly, intentionally, with a peace I hadn't felt during the entire planning process before. We trimmed the guest list down to those who had never made us feel like an inconvenience, friends who showed up without conditions, relatives who had always treated us like equals. The rest we let go." On the morning of the wedding, I woke up before my alarm. Sunlight filtered through the curtains. The house was still. I didn't feel nervous, I felt steady as I stepped into my dress later that morning. I caught my reflection and paused. This wasn't the girl who always made room. This was a woman who had finally claimed her space. The ceremony was simple, beautiful, and intimate. There was no competition for attention, no tension humming beneath forced smiles. When I said my vows, my voice didn't tremble. When I looked at my husband, I didn't feel like I was proving anything to anyone. I felt present. We left that afternoon, slipping away while the city continued as if nothing monumental had happened. My phone stayed on silent because, for once, I didn't need commentary. 3 days later, while sitting on a balcony overlooking the ocean, I posted a single photo, just one of us smiling, rings visible, with the caption, "We got married." That was it. The reaction was immediate. My phone exploded with missed calls, voicemails, and messages piling up. My mother's text came first, "What is this?" Then my brother, "You did this on purpose." Then my aunt, "You embarrassed the family." I didn't respond. I was barefoot, listening to the waves, holding my husband's hand. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to explain myself. When I finally answered my mother days later, her voice shook not with concern, but with a loss of control. "You went behind our backs," she said. "No," I replied calmly. "I moved forward with my life." She accused me of being selfish, of stealing my brother's moment, of humiliating her. I listened, then said something I'd never said before. "I didn't cancel my wedding," I stated. "You tried to." Silence followed. My brother was furious. He called me dramatic, petty, and unforgivable. I let him speak, then gently said, "I hope your engagement party was everything you wanted," and ended the call. Some relatives stopped talking to me altogether. Others quietly reached out months later to apologize. A few admitted they had always seen how things worked, they just hadn't wanted to be the next ones pushed aside. I didn't ask for explanations. I let people show me who they were. Months passed, life settled, and something unexpected happened. Peace didn't feel lonely, it felt earned. One night, sitting on the couch, my husband asked softly, "Do you ever wish they'd been there?" I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "I wish they'd wanted to be there without conditions." People who benefit from your silence will panic when you stop explaining yourself. Family doesn't own your milestones. Love doesn't require sacrifice without respect. When someone asks you to shrink so others can shine, what they're really asking for is access, not harmony. Sometimes the most powerful I do is choosing yourself without needing permission. That's all for today's story.